...2026 has been a huge year for He-Man fans because Masters of the Universe finally returned to theaters after almost 4 decades. The last live-action movie arrived back in 1987 with Dolph Lundgren playing He-Man, and while that film was far from perfect, it eventually earned a loyal following because of its unmistakable 80s charm. Since then, the franchise never really disappeared. It kept growing through animated shows, comics, games, and a bunch of successful toy lines. So He-Man and Skeletor stayed recognizable names, even for people who didn't grow up with the original cartoon. That long-lasting popularity made many fans believe the 2026 movie would become one of the year's biggest hits. But although the film didn't perform as strongly as many expected at the box office, that doesn't necessarily mean the franchise is finished. In fact, there are several reasons to stay optimistic about a sequel. The movie itself received a pretty mixed reaction from critics, but audience opinions painted a much brighter picture. Plenty of viewers walked out saying they enjoyed the adventure, praising Nicholas Galadzin's Prince Adam, the action sequences, and the world of Eternia. Social media quickly filled with positive reactions from fans who were simply happy to see He-Man back on the big screen. But enjoying a movie after watching it and actually convincing people to buy tickets are two very different things. Because of that, the bigger question isn't whether the movie entertained audiences, it's why so many potential viewers never showed up at theaters in the first place. There probably isn't one single explanation, because box office performance is almost always influenced by a bunch of different factors. Even industry analysts usually avoid pointing to just one reason when a movie underperforms. Release timing, marketing, competition, reviews, audience habits, and production costs all play a part. Masters of the Universe seems to have faced challenges in nearly every one of those areas. But even though those obstacles affected its theatrical run, none of them completely shuts the door on another movie. If anything, several signs suggest the franchise could still continue. One of the biggest problems was simply bad timing. The first half of 2026 was packed with major theatrical releases across nearly every genre imaginable. Movie fans had an overwhelming number of choices because studios kept releasing blockbuster after blockbuster without much breathing room. Science fiction fans had Project Hail Mary, gaming fans rushed out to see the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and several other high-profile productions filled theaters week after week. June became especially crowded. Horror fans had plenty to celebrate, with hits like Obsession and Backrooms, both of which generated massive buzz. Steven Spielberg's long-awaited Disclosure Day also landed during the same period and immediately became one of the month's biggest attractions. Even Scary Movie returned after more than a decade away, bringing back longtime fans who had grown up with the parody franchise. All those releases arrived almost at the same time, so casual moviegoers simply couldn't watch everything. Most people don't visit theaters every weekend, so they naturally choose one or two movies that interest them the most. Masters of the Universe unfortunately had to compete against several highly anticipated films, all fighting for the same audience. Loyal He-Man fans still showed up, but attracting completely new viewers became much harder because there were so many alternatives available. The competition wasn't limited to June either. Big May releases were still dominating conversations in theaters. Movies like The Mandalorian and Grogu continued pulling audiences, leaving even less room for another expensive fantasy blockbuster to find momentum. Sometimes a good movie simply arrives at the wrong moment, and that appears to have happened here. Reviews also played an important role. People who weren't already familiar with He-Man probably waited to see what critics had to say before spending money on tickets. While audience reactions leaned more positive, professional reviews were much more divided. Some critics praised the movie's world-building, visuals, and performances, while others criticized its pacing and story. Those conflicting opinions created uncertainty among people who were already undecided. Meanwhile, competing films like Backrooms and Obsession enjoyed stronger support from both critics and audiences. That combination naturally made them look like safer choices for casual viewers. Even Scary Movie managed to attract crowds, despite receiving weaker reviews because the franchise already had decades of recognition and nostalgia working in its favor. It reportedly cost even more to produce, around $200 million, but generated approximately $680 million worldwide. Those kinds of extraordinary numbers are what studios hope for whenever they invest heavily in blockbuster filmmaking. Masters of the Universe simply couldn't match that level of commercial success during its theatrical run. Tone matters even more for Masters of the Universe because the original animated series blended fantasy, adventure, colorful characters, and larger-than-life heroics in a very specific way. Capturing that feeling inside a short trailer isn't easy. Although the finished movie connected with many viewers, the promotional material may not have communicated its strengths clearly enough beforehand. Streaming expectations also likely influenced audience decisions. Since the movie comes from Amazon MGM, many viewers naturally assumed it would eventually appear on Prime Video. That expectation changes how people approach theatrical releases. Instead of feeling pressured to watch it opening weekend, some subscribers probably decided to wait until it became available through a service they already pay for every month. Home viewing has become more appealing than ever because people enjoy watching movies comfortably without dealing with crowded theaters or additional ticket costs. This probably didn't affect every potential viewer, but even losing a small percentage of ticket buyers can significantly impact box office numbers. When release schedules are already packed with competing blockbusters, waiting for streaming becomes an even easier decision for many families. But despite all those challenges, there are still plenty of reasons to believe Masters of the Universe could continue. A weaker theatrical performance doesn't automatically end a franchise anymore because studios evaluate success differently than they did 10 or 20 years ago. Director Travis Knight has already made it clear that he would love to return for another adventure in Eternia. He has even spoken about exploring new stories if audiences continue supporting the franchise. At the same time, he acknowledged that viewers ultimately decide whether another chapter gets made. That attitude shows genuine passion for the property rather than treating it as just another blockbuster assignment. Amazon MGM also appears to be looking beyond traditional box office numbers. Company executives have discussed the importance of their overall distribution strategy, suggesting they value long-term audience engagement instead of focusing only on opening weekend revenue. That's an important difference, because streaming performance, repeat viewing, and continued interest can all influence future decisions. If Masters of the Universe performs strongly on Prime Video after its theatrical run, the movie could gain an entirely new audience. Plenty of films have found greater popularity after reaching streaming platforms because viewers who skip theaters finally decide to give them a chance. Strong streaming numbers could easily strengthen the argument for continuing the series. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.